death. Feared, worshipped, and inevitable. Across cultures and centuries, gods of death have ruled the afterlife, guiding souls beyond the veil. But who are these deities? From Hades, the ruler of the Greek underworld, to Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of Egypt, to the terrifying Shinigami of Japan, each god has their own domain, purpose, and legend. Join us as we explore the mythologies that shaped our understanding of life's greatest mystery, death itself. Are they guardians, judges, or something more? Let's uncover the truth behind the gods of death. Thanatos, the Greek personification of death. Thanatos is the ancient Greek personification of death, often depicted as a winged youth, embodying a peaceful and inevitable end. As a minor but significant figure in Greek mythology, he represents nonviolent death, distinct from the chaotic and war-driven death associated with other deities like Hades or Ares. This essay explores Thanatos' origins, role in mythology, artistic representations, and his broader influence on literature and philosophy. Origins and genealogy. Thanatos is the son of Nyx, night, and Erebos, darkness, primordial deities who embody the unseen and shadowy aspects of existence. His twin brother is Hypnos, sleep, reinforcing the ancient Greek belief in death as a form of eternal rest. This familial connection also highlights the dual nature of Thanatos. While feared, he is also viewed as a natural counterpart to sleep, something both inevitable and, at times, even welcome. Nyx, their mother, was among the most powerful primordial deities, feared even by Zeus. Her offspring, including Thanatos and Hypnos, held significant sway over the natural order of life and death. Thanatos' role, however, was unique in that he did not act out of malice or vengeance. He simply ensured the transition of souls from life to the underworld, maintaining the balance of existence. Role in Greek mythology. Unlike Hades, who ruled the underworld, Thanatos' role was more direct. He personally guided souls to their final destination. Unlike the Kuris, female spirits associated with violent death on the battlefield, Thanatos presided over peaceful deaths, often portrayed as gentle and unavoidable. One of the most famous myths involving Thanatos is the story of Sisyphus, the cunning king of Corinth. Sisyphus managed to outwit Thanatos by tricking him into chains, temporarily preventing death from occurring in the world. As a result, no one could die, leading to chaos among both mortals and gods. Eventually, Ares, the god of war, intervened, freeing Thanatos and restoring the natural order. This myth highlights the inevitability of death and the futility of attempting to escape it. Another well-known story involves the hero Alcestis, whose self-sacrifice to save her husband, Admetus, led to a confrontation between Thanatos and Hercules. When Thanatos came to claim Alcestis' soul, Heracles wrestled him into submission, forcing him to relinquish her life. This tale underscores the idea that even death itself could be momentarily delayed but never completely defeated. Thanatos in art and literature. Thanatos has been depicted in various artistic and literary forms throughout history. In ancient Greek art, he often appears as a youthful, winged figure, symbolizing the swiftness and inevitability of death. He is sometimes portrayed carrying a butterfly, representing the soul, or an extinguished torch, further emphasizing his role in ending life. Classical literature, including the works of Homer and Hesiod, references Thanatos in ways that reinforce his impartial and unyielding nature. In the Iliad, for example, Thanatos and Hypnos are depicted working together to transport the body of Sarpedon, a fallen warrior, back to his homeland for burial. This illustrates his role as a gentle guide rather than a terrifying force. In later philosophical interpretations, Thanatos' presence influenced discussions on mortality and the human condition. The Roman poet Horace's phrase pallida mors, pale death, echoes the impartial nature of Thanatos, reminding all of life's transience. Thanatos in modern influence. The concept of Thanatos has extended beyond mythology into psychology and literature. Sigmund Freud, for instance, used the term Thanatos to describe the death drive, a theoretical instinct leading humans towards self-destruction and the return to an inanimate state. This idea contrasts with Eros, the life drive, further emphasizing the duality between life and death. Thanatos also appears in modern literature, film, and art as a symbol of inevitable fate, often depicted as a quiet, omnipresent force rather than a violent specter. His influence can be seen in works dealing with existential themes, reinforcing the ancient Greek notion that death is not an antagonist but a natural conclusion to life. Thanatos, the Greek personification of death, remains a compelling and thought-provoking figure. Unlike deities associated with war, chaos, or vengeance, he represents death's inescapable but non-hostile nature. His presence in mythology, art, and literature serves as a reminder of life's transience and the natural order governing existence. Whether viewed as a gentle guide or an impassive force, Thanatos continues to shape cultural and philosophical discussions on mortality, reinforcing the ancient wisdom that death, like sleep, is a necessary and universal aspect of life. Hades, the ruler of the Greek underworld. In Greek mythology, Hades is one of the most enigmatic and significant deities, known as the ruler of the underworld and overseer of the dead. Despite his dark domain, he is not considered an evil god but rather a necessary force in maintaining balance in the cosmos. Often misunderstood and overshadowed by his Olympian siblings, Hades plays a crucial role in the mythology of ancient Greece. This essay explores the origins, myths, roles, and cultural significance of Hades in an attempt to clarify his true nature and influence within Greek mythology. Origins and genealogy. Hades was the son of the Titans Cronus and Rhea, making him the brother of Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. After Cronus devoured his children to prevent them from usurping his power, Zeus ultimately led a rebellion against him, forcing Cronus to regurgitate his swallowed offspring. Following their liberation, the three male siblings, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, defeated the Titans in the epic Titanomachy. As a result, they divided the cosmos among themselves. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon ruled the seas, and Hades was given dominion over the underworld. The underworld, Hades' realm. The underworld, often simply referred to as Hades, is the realm where souls of the deceased reside. Unlike Christian conceptions of hell, Hades was not necessarily a place of punishment but rather the final resting place for all souls, good or bad. It was divided into different sections, including Elysium, a paradise for the virtuous and heroic souls. Asphodel Meadows, a neutral zone where ordinary souls wandered without pain or pleasure. Tartarus, a deep abyss where the wicked and those who defied the gods were condemned to eternal suffering. Hades' domain was guarded by the three-headed dog, Cerberus, whose duty was to prevent the dead from escaping and the living from entering. The souls had to cross the river Styx, often ferried by Charon, provided they had been buried with a coin as payment. Hades' role and responsibilities. As the ruler of the underworld, Hades was responsible for overseeing the proper order of the afterlife. Unlike the other Olympian gods, he was not a god of death. That role belonged to Thanatos, the personification of death. Instead, Hades ensured that souls were judged and sent to their respective afterlife destinations. He also maintained balance, ensuring that no soul left his realm without divine permission. Hades was also associated with wealth and fertility. Since precious metals and gems were found underground, he was sometimes referred to as Pluton, from which the Roman Pluto is derived, meaning the wealthy one. Additionally, he played a role in agriculture, as seeds must be buried in the ground to grow, a connection reflected in his myth with Persephone. The myth of Hades and Persephone. One of the most well-known myths involving Hades is his abduction of Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. According to the myth, Hades fell in love with Persephone and took her to the underworld to be his queen. Devastated, Demeter caused the earth to wither, leading to widespread famine. Zeus intervened, ordering Hades to return Persephone. However, because she had eaten pomegranate seeds in the underworld, she was bound to stay for a portion of the year. As a compromise, she would spend part of the year with her mother and the other part with Hades, explaining the cycle of the seasons. Her return to the surface marked spring and summer, while her descent signaled autumn and winter. Depictions and worship. Unlike many Olympian gods, Hades was not widely worshipped, as people feared invoking his name. He was rarely depicted in art, but when he was, he appeared as a stern, bearded figure often accompanied by Cerberus or holding the bident, a two-pronged staff. He sometimes wore the helm of darkness, a gift from the Cyclopes that granted invisibility. Temples and shrines dedicated to Hades were rare, but some existed in locations associated with entrances to the underworld, such as Necromantion of Acheron in Epirus. people often avoided directly calling on Hades, instead referring to him by euphemisms like the unseen one to avoid attracting his attention. Hades in later cultures. Hades' role and character evolved over time, influencing later religious and literary traditions. The Romans adopted him as Pluto, a god of both the underworld and wealth. In modern times, Hades has been depicted in literature, films, and video games, often misrepresented as a villain. However, a deeper understanding of Greek mythology shows him as a just and necessary deity rather than a malevolent figure. Hades remains one of Greek mythology's most fascinating deities, embodying the complexities of death, the afterlife, and wealth. Unlike his portrayal in popular culture, he was neither evil nor cruel but rather a vital force maintaining cosmic balance. His myths, particularly his role in the Persephone story, highlight his significance in explaining natural cycles. Though feared, Hades was ultimately a fair and dutiful ruler of the underworld, shaping the Greek understanding of life, death, and the afterlife. Persephone, Queen of the Underworld. Persephone is one of the most significant goddesses in Greek mythology. She is best known as the Queen of the Underworld and the wife of Hades, the god of the dead. Persephone is also associated with spring, fertility, and vegetation, which gives her a dual nature. She is both a symbol of life and death. Her myth, particularly her abduction by Hades, explains the cycle of the seasons and has influenced literature, art, and religion for centuries. Origins and family. Persephone was the daughter of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and fertility. As the daughter of Demeter, Persephone was originally known as Kore, meaning maiden, signifying her purity and youthful beauty. She was often depicted as an innocent and carefree goddess, associated with flowers and nature. The myth of Persephone's abduction. The most famous myth involving Persephone is her abduction by Hades. According to the Homeric hymn to Demeter, Hades fell in love with Persephone and sought to make her his queen. Zeus, knowing that Demeter would never willingly allow their daughter to live in the underworld, subtly consented to Hades' plan. One day, as Persephone was gathering flowers in a meadow, the earth suddenly opened, and Hades emerged in his chariot, seizing her and taking her to his dark kingdom. When Demeter realized her daughter was missing, she was overcome with grief and searched the world for her. She wandered for 9 days and nights without rest, neglecting her duties as the goddess of harvest. As a result, the earth became barren, and crops failed, leading to famine. Eventually, Helios, the sun god, who sees all, revealed to Demeter that Zeus had permitted Hades to take Persephone as his wife. In her despair, Demeter withdrew to Eleusis, where she disguised herself as an old woman. She was taken in by the royal family and attempted to make their son immortal. However, when her divine nature was discovered, she revealed herself and demanded that Zeus order Hades to return her daughter. Zeus, recognizing that the world was on the brink of disaster, sent Hermes to the underworld to retrieve Persephone. Hades, however, had tricked Persephone into eating a few pomegranate seeds before she left. Because the fates decreed that anyone who consumed food in the underworld must remain there, Persephone was bound to return to Hades for part of the year. A compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother on Earth, bringing spring and summer, and the other part in the underworld with Hades, bringing autumn and winter. Symbolism and significance. The myth of Persephone is deeply symbolic, representing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Her time in the underworld corresponds to the barren months of winter, while her return to Earth symbolizes renewal and the blooming of nature in spring. This story was central to the Eleusinian Mysteries, an important religious cult in ancient Greece that promised initiates a deeper understanding of life, death, and the afterlife. Persephone's dual nature also reflects themes of transition, growth, and personal transformation. She begins as an innocent maiden but becomes a powerful queen, demonstrating the journey from youth to maturity. Her myth emphasizes themes of loss, resilience, and the eternal balance between darkness and light. Persephone as Queen of the Underworld. After her abduction and transformation, Persephone embraced her role as Queen of the Underworld. She ruled alongside Hades, not as a passive captive but as a powerful goddess who influenced the fate of souls. She was known for her mercy and justice, offering solace to those who had suffered unjustly and ensuring that punishments were fairly administered. Despite her association with death, Persephone was also seen as a bringer of life. Her return each year symbolized the return of fertility and abundance to the world. Many ancient Greek festivals, such as the Thesmophoria, were held in her honor, celebrating her dual role as both a harbinger of death and a giver of new life. Worship and cults. Persephone was widely worshipped throughout Greece, particularly in connection with the Eleusinian mysteries. These secret religious rites were held annually at Eleusis and were considered some of the most profound and spiritually significant ceremonies in ancient Greece. Initiates were promised knowledge of the afterlife and the hope of a blessed existence beyond death. The Thesmophoria, another festival dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, was an exclusive event for women. It focused on fertility, marriage, and the agricultural cycle, reflecting Persephone's role in both the underworld and the natural world. In Rome, Persephone was equated with Proserpina, and her myth continued to be revered. Her worship extended beyond Greece and Rome into various other cultures, where she was often associated with local deities of fertility and the underworld. Influence on art and literature. Persephone's myth has inspired countless works of art, literature, and philosophy. Ancient Greek vase paintings often depict her abduction, her return from the underworld, or her interactions with Hades and Demeter. She appears in classical literature, including Ovid's Metamorphoses, and her story continues to be retold in modern literature, films, and poetry. One of the most famous literary references to Persephone is in Dante's Inferno, where she symbolizes the cyclical nature of suffering and renewal. In modern times, she has been reinterpreted in feminist literature, often seen as a figure of empowerment who transitions from victim to ruler. Persephone's story is one of the most compelling in Greek mythology, encapsulating themes of love, loss, transformation, and renewal. As both the queen of the underworld and the goddess of spring, she represents the eternal balance between death and life. Her myth explains the seasons, highlights the power of resilience, and continues to inspire art and literature today. Through her journey, Persephone teaches us about the inevitability of change and the strength found in embracing our dualities. Charon, the ferryman of the dead. Charon is one of the most enigmatic and haunting figures in Greek mythology. He is the underworld's ferryman, responsible for transporting souls across the river Styx, or the river Acheron, in some accounts, to their final resting place in the realm of Hades. His role is crucial in the afterlife, ensuring that the deceased reach their destination. Charon's image as a grim and relentless guide of the dead has endured for centuries, influencing literature, art, and modern interpretations of the afterlife. Origins and mythological role. Charon's origins trace back to ancient Greek religious beliefs about death and the afterlife. He is the son of Nyx, night, and Erebus, darkness, primordial deities associated with the earliest cosmic elements. His association with such ancient forces emphasizes his function as an eternal and unchanging figure in the underworld. Charon is described as a sullen, aged, and rugged boatman who demands a payment for his services. The deceased must offer an obolus, a small coin, which was traditionally placed in their mouth or on their eyes during burial rites. Those who could not pay were doomed to wander the shores of the river for eternity, denied passage into the afterlife. This practice highlights the Greeks' belief in proper funeral rites and the consequences of improper burials. The journey across the river Styx. The journey with Charon was a one-way voyage, symbolizing the irrevocability of death. The river he navigates is most commonly the Styx, which separates the world of the living from the underworld, though some sources also mention the Acheron, the river of woe. Regardless of the river, Charon's role remains the same, to ferry the souls of the dead across to the other side, where Hades, the god of the underworld, presides. Charon himself is depicted as an indifferent figure, neither judging the souls nor providing comfort. His duty is merely to transport them, reinforcing the inevitability and impartiality of death. The depiction of Charon as a grim ferryman aligns with ancient Greek views of death as an inescapable and neutral force, rather than one of active malevolence or kindness. Depictions in art and literature. Charon has been a subject of fascination in art and literature for centuries. In classical Greek pottery, he is often shown as an elderly man with a long beard, piloting a small boat. Later representations, particularly during the Renaissance and Romantic periods, emphasized his ominous nature, sometimes portraying him as a skeletal figure, further cementing his association with death. One of the most famous literary descriptions of Charon comes from Virgil's Aeneid, Book 6, where Aeneas visits the underworld. Virgil describes Charon as a fearsome figure with glaring eyes, a filthy cloak, and an unkempt appearance, underscoring his grim nature. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri also features Charon in Inferno, where he ferries damned souls across the river Acheron to enter hell. This Christian adaptation of Charon's role demonstrates his influence beyond Greek mythology and into later religious and literary traditions. Cultural and symbolic significance. Charon's role as a ferryman makes him a liminal figure, existing between life and death. He represents the threshold between existence and oblivion, serving as a guide for souls but not as a judge of their fates. His demand for payment reflects the Greek cultural emphasis on funerary traditions and the belief that proper rites ensured a peaceful transition to the afterlife. The imagery of Charon has persisted in various modern adaptations. He appears in contemporary literature, films, and video games as a symbol of the passage between worlds. His name has also been used in astronomy. Pluto's largest moon, Charon, was named in honor of the mythological figure, reinforcing his connection to the underworld and death. Charon remains one of the most iconic figures in Greek mythology, symbolizing the inexorable journey into the afterlife. His portrayal as the ferryman of the dead has influenced countless works of art, literature, and popular culture. Whether seen as a grim figure of fate or a neutral guide through the unknown, Charon continues to captivate the imagination, reminding humanity of the thin veil that separates life from death. Orcus and Dispater, the Roman gods of the underworld. The ancient Romans had a rich pantheon of gods that influenced their religious beliefs, daily lives, and understanding of the afterlife. Among the deities associated with death and the underworld, two significant figures stand out: Orcus and Dispater. Both of these gods shared similarities with the Greek god Hades, yet they possessed distinct characteristics that reflected Roman beliefs about the afterlife and divine justice. This article delves into their origins, attributes, roles, and significance in Roman mythology and religious practices. Orcus, the punisher of oathbreakers and the underworld god. Origins and name. Orcus was a god of the underworld in Roman mythology, often associated with punishment, death, and the afterlife. His name is believed to be derived from the Latin word orcus, which means the underworld or realm of the dead. Some scholars also link his name to the Indo-European root orc, meaning to swear an oath, reinforcing his role as a punisher of those who broke their solemn vows. Orcus's character and function were influenced by earlier Etruscan mythology, particularly by the Etruscan underworld deity, Orcus, sometimes depicted as a giant, bearded figure with a menacing presence. As Roman religious beliefs evolved, Orcus became more synonymous with other underworld deities, though his role remained distinct in some traditions. Attributes and depictions. Orcus was primarily viewed as a god of death and divine retribution. Unlike Hades, who was more of a ruler of the dead, Orcus was feared as an enforcer of oaths and a punisher of the wicked. He was often depicted as a grim, bearded figure, similar to Pluto or Hades, but he sometimes had monstrous features, reflecting his association with punishment. Orcus was often linked with chthonic creatures, demons, and spirits of the underworld. Some Roman and later medieval texts describe him as a dark, shadowy figure who hunted down oathbreakers, dragging them to the underworld for eternal punishment. His fearsome nature made him a significant figure in Roman funerary and religious practices, where offerings were made to appease him and prevent his wrath. Orcus in popular culture and folklore. Though worship of Orcus faded with the spread of Christianity, his name and image endured in folklore and later literary traditions. In medieval times, he was often equated with demons or devils, reinforcing his role as a punishing figure. His name survives in words like ogre, a term used for monstrous, fearsome creatures in later European mythologies. Dispater, the wealthy ruler of the dead. Origins and evolution. Dispater, often shortened to Dis, was another prominent Roman god of the underworld. His name translates to rich father, derived from the Latin dives, meaning wealthy, and pater, meaning father. Like Hades, Dispater was associated with both death and wealth, symbolizing the riches found beneath the earth, such as precious metals, gems, and fertile soil. Originally, Dispater was a more general chthonic deity associated with the subterranean world rather than just the realm of the dead. Over time, he became increasingly identified with Pluto, the Roman equivalent of Hades, and was eventually merged with him in later mythology. Despite this fusion, Dispater retained distinct aspects of his character, particularly his connection to the prosperity of the land. Role and symbolism. Unlike Orcus, who was feared as a punisher, Dispater was often depicted as a solemn and just ruler of the underworld. His domain included not only the dead but also the wealth hidden beneath the earth. This dual role made him an important deity for both funerary rites and agricultural practices. Many Romans saw him as a necessary figure rather than a malevolent one, as death and wealth were both inescapable parts of existence. Dispater was frequently worshipped in association with Proserpina, the Roman equivalent of Persephone, reinforcing the idea of cyclical death and rebirth in nature. His festivals and rituals often involved prayers for prosperity, fertility, and the proper treatment of the dead to ensure their peaceful passage into the afterlife. Dispater's influence in Roman religion. Dispater was sometimes invoked in oaths, contracts, and prayers related to wealth and legacy. He played a significant role in the religious landscape of Rome, particularly in the mystery cults and rites dedicated to chthonic deities. The influence of Dispater continued into later Roman periods, where he was eventually subsumed under the broader figure of Pluto. Orcus versus Dispater, a comparative analysis. While both Orcus and Dispater were associated with the Roman underworld, their roles and attributes were distinct. Orcus was primarily seen as a punisher of the wicked and an enforcer of divine justice, whereas Dispater was a ruler of the underworld with a connection to wealth and fertility. Their differing functions reflect the Roman perception of the underworld not just as a place of torment but also as a realm of balance and necessary transition. Key differences. Feature. Orcus. Dispater. Role. Punisher of oathbreakers and the wicked. Ruler of the underworld, associated with wealth. Origins. Etruscan influence, later absorbed into Roman beliefs. Initially a chthonic deity, later merged with Pluto. Symbolism. Divine retribution, punishment, and demons. Prosperity, riches, and the cycle of life and death. Worship. Feared, appeased through funerary rituals. Revered in agricultural and funerary contexts. Worship and legacy. The Romans held elaborate funerary rites to honor their dead and appease underworld deities. Orcus was feared, and his wrath was avoided through proper burial practices and moral behavior. Dispater, on the other hand, was respected, and prayers were often directed toward him for blessings related to the earth's bounty. Orcus and Dispater eventually faded from mainstream Roman worship as Christianity became dominant. However, their legacy persists in literature, folklore, and linguistic traditions. Dispater's name and role as a god of wealth influenced later conceptions of Pluto, while Orcus's imagery contributed to medieval depictions of demons and underworld creatures. Orcus and Dispater were two of the most significant underworld gods in Roman mythology, each serving a unique function in the spiritual and cultural landscape of ancient Rome. While Orcus was a feared enforcer of divine justice, Dispater was a solemn ruler associated with wealth and the natural cycles of life and death. Their worship reflected Roman attitudes toward morality, the afterlife, and the unseen forces governing both human fate and the natural world. Though their influence waned with time, their legacy remains evident in mythology, language, and later cultural interpretations of the underworld and its rulers. From the underworld to the afterlife, the gods of death have shaped myths, beliefs, and even our fears. Whether they guide souls, judge the departed, or reign over the unknown, these deities remind us that death is not just an end, but a passage. Which god of death intrigued you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into mythology, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into ancient legends. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, even death has its storytellers.